Welcome back, my friends. We are going to go into Module 3, Emotional Attunement. I'm really curious kind of where your head's at right now. When you hear emotional attunement or empathy, do you kind of write off as, yeah, that's impossible. That's not how I'm wired. That I've tried everything. This is, I'm guessing, the most common question that I get asked. And my hope is today I'll be able to shed a little bit of light on what are some practical things that you can do to help with emotional attunement. How can you help your wife to begin opening up? Because ultimately, as we'll get into in a little bit, her opening up is what will play a significant role in her healing as well as you as a unit healing. So let's jump in. I'm not going to belabor this point because it's quite likely that your wife has shared these verses with you a number of times about weeping with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. So yes, it's biblical. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there because I don't want you to feel like I'm beating you over the head, because here's the thing. You probably already know that scripture encourages emotional attunement, particularly with our spouse, right? Now, with trust building, predictability is imperative. If our spouse cannot predict our behavior, particularly based on our words, no trust can really be built. And so when you are able to connect emotionally, it's not just because she wants to feel a sense of, my husband cares about me. It's empathy to her is very likely a level of insurance that you're actually being sober, because she's well aware that there is no way that she can definitively know that you're being honest about the level of sobriety that you are currently walking in. So if you feel a sense of tension when you struggle to connect emotionally with her, that could well be why. So very important module as we dive in. One of the first things that I'll point out is it's not uncommon for guys within the church to say, I'm sorry, I screwed up. I shouldn't have struggled with this. I shouldn't have, whatever. And so I'm not saying I'm sorry generally is bad, but what you need to know is the more specific you can be, the better. Because she needs to know that you know the depth of the pain that you have caused. In fact, I would encourage you to even bring up additional things that she might not have brought up before. Because one, it's most likely that she's already thinking about it. And two, it shows that you are with her in it. For example, sweetheart, I have royally screwed up over the last several years of marriage by viewing pornography and masturbating, and the amount of time that has taken away. Like, it is no doubt that it has not only hurt my relationship with you and yours with me, but even though the kids don't know about the struggle, I have no doubt that it has reduced the amount of time that I've spent with them, as well as emotional availability that I have felt toward them. And for that, I am so sorry. And that's something I'm still honestly grappling with to this day. Okay. Imagine if in the various components of your life, you were to be able to speak with that kind of sincerity and that kind of thought about the impacts of your behavior in various areas of your life. Oftentimes we as guys don't think about that. We tend to kind of just move on from things. And so I would encourage you to spend some time thinking, writing down some of the different areas in which you have broken trust, caused hurt and harm to your marriage, to your lives, to your family's livelihood, etc. Write them down and express sincere apology while taking full responsibility for it. Again, the more specific you can be, the more genuine it will feel, and genuineness in this is everything. As your wife begins to open up, she's most likely not wanting theology, she's not wanting explanations, she's not wanting excuses. So often we can jump to defensiveness of, well, no, it was because that's not what she wants. That's not what she needs right now. Don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for her to begin to understand where you're coming from. In fact, the next module we get into is going to be on understanding. And it's going to be for both parties important for you to understand her and where she's coming from and what she's feeling. It'll also be very important for her to understand you, your feelings, and where you're coming from. So we're getting there. But before you start logicking your way out of it and creating explanations. She wants to know that you understand where she's at and what she's feeling and why. Ultimately, as we started off in the very first lesson, our goal in all of this is to be like Christ with his church, where he says, I am with you always, not just when he was here on earth physically, but also now through his spirit, never leaving our side, wanting to be intimately in relationship with us. And that is what our calling is, to be to our wife, to be always with her, always present, always on the same page to the best of our abilities. So how can we promote emotional attunement then? Well, we already talked about apology, sincere apology, as well as seeking to genuinely understand her instead of providing answers and logic. But we'll continue to move on. Own mistakes thoroughly. So don't just leave it at, I'm sorry. Go into the full depth of what it is that you are sorry for. She needs to know that you know the full extent of what you have done and what pain you have caused. Number 2, maintain eye contact. This can be really hard, especially when we feel a significant amount of shame. Our tendency can be to look anywhere, frankly, but at her. And that makes it really hard for her to gauge how sincere you are. Additionally, pursue deeper insight into how she feels from a place of honest care for her well-being. Think about questions ahead of time. Like, don't just, how are you feeling today? That's a fine question, but again, the more specific, the better. Okay, if she says, I'm pretty pissed off if I'm completely honest, thank you for sharing that. Is it something recent or is it something in the past that's kind of bogging you down right now? And what kind of assurance or encouragement do you need from me? Be prone to asking question after question from a place of sincere desire to know her heart, where she's at. Because here's the trick. And I don't want to say trick because this should not, if you use this to get your own way, this is absolutely going to bite you in the butt. No question. But it is only by exposing the bitterness, this anger, the lack of forgiveness, the stuff that's seething within her, it's only by allowing that to come out that it will be detoxed by the light of day. And so where my tendency early in recovery was, well, she seems to be kind of having a decent day right now, so I really don't want to bring up the fact that I've messed up again and have her have a bad day. Or she's already having a bad day. I don't want to make it even worse. Like, we can always find excuses to not be honest and not attuned to our wife's emotions. The challenge is, and the important thing is, to always seek to go deeper and to know our wife more and more and more. That unlocks everything. If you can connect with your wife in a way that allows her to allow the stuff that's kind of built up and been festering, if you can build her trust enough to allow that to come to the surface, counterintuitive, I know, it will significantly over time help you guys to be able to communicate in a more healthy manner. But what that means is you need to let her talk and verbalize. Don't cut her off. Here's a quick tip for you. Oftentimes couples will cut each other off, and a person who doesn't feel like they've allowed themselves to be heard is not in a place to actually hear what you have to say. And so before you start sharing anything about your side of the story, encourage her to keep talking, even if it feels like you're just a human punching bag. It is so helpful for her to continue to process through. And I agree. Again, we're getting into this, but you need the opportunity to talk too. That might be with your wife. Ideally, that's with your wife. In addition, you could have the opportunity with other guys, therapists, etc. So pursue deep insight into how your wife is feeling, what she's thinking, and allow those toxic type of emotions like anger to see the light of day. Again, super counterintuitive, but so incredibly important. Genuinely utilize the phrases, I am wrong, you are right. Help me better understand, fill in the blank. Again, your goal is to go deeper and deeper into why she feels what she feels, why she thinks the way she thinks, what the implications are in her mind of what she thinks and feels, all of that. So, what if she's unwilling to connect emotionally, and therefore emotional attunement doesn't feel viable? One of the typical ways that this can manifest is anger. I try to connect, get her to open up and be real with me, but all I get is anger, right? Anger in itself is an emotion. Anger oftentimes masks what the deeper emotion is, but if she doesn't feel like you're safe, or that you will respect her emotions, or that you actually care or want to know or will protect her heart, she may not feel like you are deserving of knowing where her heart is actually, and you may just get anger. Again, my encouragement is keep pursuing her heart even when it hurts. Nothing about this process of rebuilding trust is easy, but as I mentioned at the end of last module, all of the ways in which you are growing in strength, in courage, in leadership ability, all of this is going to positively impact who you are even outside of your rebuilding trust with your wife. Now, there are a number of, frankly, excuses that guys will give, myself included, as to why they can't emotionally attune to their wife. One of them, for example, is time. I don't have enough time to allow her to talk for 15 hours every night when I get home from work, right? Okay, a couple of things. One, it can feel like a long time because it's really heavy stuff, but we need to go through it. We need to process through it with them. The reality is rebuilding trust does take a tremendous amount of time, but if we keep busy and we don't initiate the difficult conversations, then all we're doing is prolonging the duration of the painful state that you're currently in. And you risk increasing a sense of hopelessness. So my encouragement is jump into this with both feet. One of the other things that can be really challenging to feel emotional attunement with our spouse is when we are so stimulated from other things in life. Oftentimes we'll have our hobbies or things that we enjoy, right? So whether it's watching sports, whether it's hanging with the guys, whether it's work, whether it's video games, whether it's fill in the blank, there's so many different things in life that are super stimulating. And if we're completely honest, when we're talking to another human being, it can feel far less stimulating. Back when we were early in the rebuilding trust process, I was playing video games, and that would get my brain just kind of buzzing, just, thinking about what I was going to do next, thinking about, like, literally video games, just like social media, are designed to capture your attention and be as addictive as possible. And so then when I would go from video games to Sarah wanting to connect with me on a heart level, I literally felt like I couldn't make that jump. I was just like, huh? It sounds ridiculous, but it is true. My encouragement would be not just for the sake of rebuilding trust with your spouse, but for the sake of growing into more the man that God desires for you to be, reduce the amount of overstimulating things in your life. That could be cell phone usage, that could be video games, that could be TV, movies, that could social media, YouTube, etc. Like, it absolutely robs us of our drive to build something with our lives, including to rebuild our marriage. And so this is a topic for another time, but over the course of the last several years, I've been drastically cutting out the various things that create stimulation that aren't also intrinsically valuable. Additionally, we must be willing to sacrifice our privacy. We must be willing to not only share our story and our struggles to appropriate levels with different people to help us process, but it's important that we allow and encourage our wife to share and process with anyone that she thinks could help her to process through the pain that she's in. We also must be willing to sacrifice cowardice. I know I've said this like 15 different ways, but it is that vital. We must be the ones to initiate difficult conversations and ask hard questions. There's a saying in the business world that oftentimes the conversations that you most don't want to have are the most important conversations. That's the same thing in your relationship with your wife. Oftentimes, I would tell my wife while we were in the midst of the early rebuilding trust phase of our relationship, like, I feel like I'm mentally overloaded right now. I can't. Can we come back to this? And she would say yes, and I would never come back to it, which then broke trust. So there are times and places where, yeah, it's not the right time for a conversation. Let's say there are kids right there present. Maybe not the best time to have a yelling match. But always be the one to initiate coming back to those conversations for the reasons I previously expressed. It takes time, and you need to get to the core issues and allow those core issues to breathe a number of times in order for her to experience a level of healing and for you to grow in your knowledge and understanding of where her heart and mind are at. By initiating those conversations, especially those hard ones, you're showing her that, one, you care about her enough to follow up, even though it's uncomfortable, and two, empathy builds trust. You also must be willing to sacrifice resentment. The reality is, as the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. So your wife right now, who is desperately hurting most likely, is very prone to hurt you as well. And it's a really challenging time for sure. And you need opportunities to be able to process through that with other people. But we also must recognize that whatever kind of hurt our wife causes us, we have caused vastly more hurt to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so we must be leading by example in forgiving our wife. So one of the things that I don't want to move on from emotional attunement until I address is, who is caring for you in your pain? This is where it is so vitally important that you have someone that you can process through stuff with, because there's so much uncharted territory, not just as far as your marriage, but also as far as your own heart. If you have been stuffing things for years, if you've been trapped in addiction for years, like, there's so much that you don't know. And as you're processing through it, as you're potentially feeling for the first time, and you're trying not to numb out, it can feel absolutely unbearable. It is vital that you process through that with people. Again, that can be professional counselors, that can be a pastor, that can be a guy in a recovery group. It needs to be someone or someone's plural. Now, one of the questions I would encourage you to ask your wife if she is brought up, when you express your emotions, it's just gaslighting. That's a fairly common sentiment, right? Which leaves guys feeling like, I thought you wanted me to be honest, but you're saying be honest about what I did, but not what I feel. But you also kind of want to know what I felt in that why I did what I did, but then you don't want to know. It gets super confusing. So again, asking the hard questions can be super helpful. So one question that can be super helpful for you and for your wife in navigating this is expressing, honey, it's killing me knowing that I'm causing you pain. Would you prefer that I process my pain exclusively with a counselor or another guy so it doesn't come across to you as gaslighting? Or would you prefer that, to the best of my ability, I'm honest with you about my emotions as we work through this? That question will help her to realize that you need to be able to be honest, but you don't want to come across like you're gaslighting. But my hope is that this helps create an avenue for you to be able to process honestly with guys who can hear your heart, love on you where you're at, and help you navigate this season where you may feel like a failure. You may feel like you have no dignity left, that you may have no love or respect from anyone in the world. It is imperative that you connect with guys who are able to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this season, who can hear your sin and love on you no matter where you're at. Next module, we're going to go into curiosity and understanding. Very much looking forward to jumping into that with you.